Hello, hello, and welcome back to Shatter Our Souls with Novaria. Now, last time I was at this and was poking around at beating Need for Speed Most Wanted using only the LEXUS LS 300, I realized something. It was a 45-minute video. I beat one boss. And while there are some who would like longer length videos, I'm not going to be forcing every single person to be watching those. Thus, there has to be a new way of going about this. Which is specifically that I'm going to be splitting the next bosses into a couple different segments, shall we say. The first segment will always be regarding the milestones, the pursuits, the um, the speed traps. And if I have time, I'll do a couple other items while I'm at it. But the goal, as a general statement, is that I want to make it so that the game as a whole doesn't fall into the same problems 24/7, if that makes sense. I want the game to be fresh, and I want those who decide to watch this, regardless of how bad my driving is, um, to be able to actually watch it without feeling burdened by the length of the video or anything like that. But that only goes so far. So, with that in mind, we're going to see what happens here. I'm going to be doing the last of the milestone challenges that I've been poking away at since starting this up. And then we're going to do the second half, which is going to be all of the races. Now, chances are I'm going to probably also bundle in the checkpoint challenges, just because they're actually my favorite races in the game. So if I bundle them in with this side, at least then I have it accessible. Come on. I don't like having to babysit the police, but here we are. Anyways, one of the things that was brought to my attention fairly early on was that certain people wanted to hear more about the various communities that have been built around these kinds of games. And I'll be honest, I haven't exactly been able to dig up much in this particular one. Partially because of a lack of time, but partially because all I've been able to find are speedrunners. Now, in and of itself, a speedrunning community is a speedrunning community. And this game has kind of a more simplistic history. It's a racing game. Of course, you're going to have a speedrunning community surrounding it. How fast can you beat a game that's literally designed to be played fast? So, I can say with absolute certainty that a base run of the game, no funny business, nothing, in a speedrunning community takes about 7.5 hours based on what I can dig up. Now, the reason for this comes down to they're only aiming for the bare minimums. So anytime that I might deviate or do extras by challenging more police chases, this is all just gravy. A speedrunner isn't going to actually do much of anything for pursuit challenges or anything like that because it's not time effective for them. The second major thing that I've noticed while poking around at speedruns is that, well, you have your basics, your cutscenes are getting cut out as quickly as possible. They're shutting down certain aspects as quickly as possible. They're blitzing and beating the police in mere seconds. But I mentioned when I was getting into the Borderlands ones, as I was saying, I mentioned that there was a certain level of finesse that was required to make certain challenges happen. And while in certain games the finesse required is literally just remapping your controller, this doesn't have that problem. The finesse required for this as a speedrun is like absolutely no hitting walls, minimal speed breaker. The attention to detail that would go into a speed run of this comparatively to a speed run of any number of other games is so minute that it is virtually unrecognizable in the format. Like, how do I put this? I overuse the speed breaker. I use it to readjust my vehicle while I'm in a rush. I use it to make a tough turn here and there. And while yes, the speed breaker is intended for those kinds of circumstances, the speed breaker is also not intended to be used the way I use it on a regular basis. That being said, a speedrunner would look at that tool and say, well, I need the speed breaker for ABXY location. What route could I take to make that happen, to minimize the amount of slowdown that I take? This can be in the form of glitches, oversights, you name it. But glitches and oversights are only half the problem here at that point. Thus, really, what it comes down to is not only knowing the game, but knowing your vehicle, knowing your terrain, and an incredible amount of luck getting it just right so that you're not running into vehicles on a regular basis. Now, ironically, there are actually two camps of speedrunners for this game. There are the completionists and the any percenters. Any percent just means that the player is going to go start to finish, beat the game, get to end credits as fast as possible, and complete the minimum number of checkpoints required. Either the minimum number of required checkpoints or the minimum number of requirements that will still allow for a certain level of speed. Effectively, get everything you can as fast as you can so that you can complete what else is left as fast as possible. There is the completionists. Now, completionists, like how I unfortunately end up playing games a lot of the time, tend to focus more on the small checklists. Have I maxed out or beat all of the races in this section of the game? Have I beat all the races in this section of the game? Have I collected all of the milestones? Have I this, that, and the other thing? And what starts as a 7-hour game actually doubles in length. Part of that is due to all of the pursuit milestones, which increase the length of the game dramatically. But also, we're getting to a point where there's already races that are no longer necessary in a full game run. So, in a full game run, theoretically, they'd avoid it like the plague. But completionists, they see every single potential challenge as a little box they need to check off. And I say that in a loving way here, because having a checklist of things to do in the form of trophies on your console or whatnot does give many people something to do and something to come back to. I know I've done it a few times myself. But what that means is that already at this point in the game, to access Taz, the second boss of the game, you need to beat 4 main races, collect 3 milestones, or 4 races on tier 2 of the blacklist, and 3 milestones. There we go. But there are 5 milestones to choose from, 3 of which are in pursuits, and 6 races to choose from. So while any percenter would pick the 4 fastest races to complete, most notably those like sprint races, as I'm doing here, a completionist would look at it and go down the list of their favorites, their least favorites, and try to complete each objective before moving on to the next major hurdle, that being the blacklist racer. In addition to that, on top of the regular career, they also have the 68 challenges in the challenge series. This is probably the biggest or is the second biggest headache. Because the 68 challenges in the challenge series, with their level of finesse, are going to be absolutely no problem. Lastly are the pursuit challenges. Completing X number of tasks in both a single pursuit and a lifetime across the entire game. The pursuit challenges mean that the player will be spending a minimum of 4 hours in pursuits based on the number 1 lifetime challenge in the pursuit challenge system. They will have a single pursuit of, I believe it's somewhere in the ballpark of half an hour or higher, meaning effectively that in any percent or in a completion run or in completion speed run, they're going to want to rack that up. But they also have to do so in a way that is careful and conscientious of what they're looking at. Because collecting some of the other milestone, like the milestone lifetime challenge, you need, I think, it's somewhere in the ballpark of 300 to 400 infractions in that system, which on a baseline doesn't sound that bad until you realize you can only get 8 infractions per chase. So they have to plan out everything down to the most minute detail to get a proper speed run going, which I thought was kind of interesting. Anywho, with all of that in mind, while I don't have the full history of who did what and when, um, I'd like to mention that I am definitely not a speedrunner of any game, once again, simply because, well, I don't necessarily, I don't want to focus on a single game as long as a speedrunner usually would, is how I will point that out. Now, with this race, this will be the final one of this video, but I will have the second half probably done the same night tonight, and I will upload it out with the regular scheduled plano, assuming that everything goes my way. Um, and I am a little bit curious because this is a new format brought about due to kind of a personal, hey, I think this would be kind of fun to do for a little bit. What do you think of it? And in what ways can I improve this style? I've already kind of figured out that the video length has been a bit of a problem, but I will be making sure to make this as tolerable as possible. Lesky, that's rude. Just a bunch of GTIs. And a sleeper car. Hmm. Anywho, if you like what you've been seeing, or curious if we're how things are going, or would like to see this challenge continue, drop a like, leave a subscribe, and are you kidding me? We'll get back to you next time. When we get back, revenge.